What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I'm bringing you my third place OTS Championship profile for Dracotail Regenesis. Yeah, I know third place is just as painful for you lot as it is for me. Literally just missing out on tiebreakers. Like first place was Dracotail Shadol, second place was pure Dracotail, which is basically just loads of Dracotail, and then I think they played just generic breakers. So I think they had I didn't really get to see the list properly, but I think they had Prankatops in the main deck and then just loads of other hand traps, which was really quite effective. And then third place, sadly, was Dracotail Regenesis. Now, I really like both of these archetypes and the way that they work, which is why ultimately I ended up going for the Regenesis over playing something like the Canines. And I did some last-minute changes that I might be happy with, I might not be. It's something that I still need to kind of replay in my head. So I'm going to take you through the profile, I'm going to show you what we've got, and I'm going to explain why we've got certain the cards. I'll show you my side deck and my extra deck so you have an idea of everything in between, and then I'll talk you through my matchups as well. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you miss out on any more upcoming content. So starting off with the Dracotail card, you're going to be wanting to max out the Femena. This card is absolutely phenomenal, and if you are moving too slowly on the Dracotails, you'll start to see that they are slowly creeping up in value. The deck is really, really good, and as I've just mentioned, from this OTS Championship, there was only like 14 players, but straight away the top 3 were all Dracotails. There was a, I think like 2 Yummies, there was a Mitsurugi Raizel, there was a Canine Fiendsmith, there was a Tenpai Canine, I think, Tenpai Canine Breaker with Buster Blader, sorry, and then I'm just trying to see, there was a Blue Eyes and loads of everything else. So like my round 1 was against Blue Eyes, round 2 was against Malice, round 3 was against Yummy, and then round 4 was against Shadol or Dracotail Doll. And pretty much like the Dracotail Doll was the only one that I lost. They just went absolutely ham. It was my first experience of Yummy, and my god, does that deck just not stop doing anything. Round 2 was Malice. It was a really good game. Like game 1, they didn't really see any engine. I was able to pretty much like play around certain interactions that they had and then build my field from there. The benefit for them is I didn't know what they were playing, so I didn't know what to side in. And then in round 1 was against pure Blue Eyes. They didn't have access to the Primite stuff yet, so it was kind of like an early door kind of play. Anyway, free Femena. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time talking about each of the individual card effects, so I've done that on previous lists, but this is basically during the main phase, you get a quick effect to discard it, to then fusion summon a Spellcaster or Dragon monster from the extra deck, and then usually what you're going to be doing is you're probably going to be using it turn 0, and it will neg you 2 cards, unless you go into the Arthleon, and then the idea is you make your Arthleon return those cards, and then you're setting Dracotail cards for the follow-up of the next turn. Then for your like ideal starter for the Dracotails and like the whole deck in general, you're going to be playing 3 of the Lucias. So this on normal or special lets you add a Dracotail monster, so you're probably going to go for the Femena, unless you want a negate, unless you want a spell of trap destruction or a monster destruction, and then you'll look at the other 3 Dracotails in the Moodaloo, the Pan, and the Urgler, which I'll talk about in a second. All of the Dracotails have the exact same effect that if they're used for fusion material, no matter how they are used, as long as it is sent to the graveyard, you then get to set a Dracotail spell or trap from the deck. At the moment, we have 2 trap cards and we have 2 spell cards are worth playing. The trap cards really did like grind my gears, and what I mean by that is the amount of times I saw the trap cards in my hand was so incredibly painful. It really did kind of like, god damn it, why are you in my hand? But they are really, really good. Like, I normally right at the end, like I tested yesterday at locals, I was like, I kind of want to cut Pan, but then I was also quite close to cutting the Horn as well. I was like, cut the Horn. Ultimately, I decided to keep them in. Pan was still a good card. It was probably closer to being useful to me than not useful. But the amount of times I saw a trap card in my hand, I was like, I can't use this to fuse or do anything weird, which is really annoying. Then for the other Dracotail monsters, I've got 2 Moodaloo. I know some people do play 3 of this, absolutely fine. When you're looking at this deck, the only kind of card that you'll go through the extra deck more consistently with will be a Typhon, which is your XEs, which is the only one that kind of clashes with stuff like your Dracotail, Rahu Dracotail, and of course your Moodaloo. But the Moodaloo is also another starter because it's one of the ones that you can normal summon it, and then you've got a quick effect during the main phase to fuse into a Dracotail fusion monster. I think I used that effect once and it was just responded to. I was like, okay, I know they've got a targeted effect. I need to try and bait that out. They never did anything. I activated Moodaloo and ended up having 2 targeted effects. I was like, okay, cool. I can't really do a lot with that. So it's not a card that I personally want to be seeing to use as my normal summon or my fusion play. I'd much rather rely on the spells, which is why I've cut it to 2. I could see myself cutting it to 1, but then there are times when you need that dragon or you need that Dracotail in hand. Because the one thing is, you need a dragon. When you're using your Femena, your targets are either going to be an Arthleon or a Glamel, probably more so like an Arthleon, which needs a Dracotail monster and then 1 monster in the hand. So you need to see a Dracotail name alongside the Femena. And then your other option is you're going to go into either Secretarian Dragon or the Majesty Crown. And to do that, you need a Dragon plus a Spellcaster. So again, that means your hand needs to be a little bit more tailored than just going into a Dracotail monster. So the Moodaloo at 2 is something that I might tempt to play at 3, but then there was cards I wanted to add into the deck that I decided to cut down and try and shave some edges off, which is why you'll see right at the last minute I cut a Ketu Dragontail, and you know, I'll talk about that in a minute, so you can either love that or hate that, and I'll explain it in a while. Then one Pan and one Urgler. So these cards, if they're sent from the deck as fusion material, and one thing that I didn't mention about the Moodaloo is it non-targets negates a monster on the field. Let me just double check it's a monster. Yeah. Also, you can't special from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. Set a Dracotail card, then negate the effects of a face-up monster your opponent controls. So non-target negation, which is really nice. You've got Urgler, which is a non-target destruction of a spell and traps. That's how you bait out some spells and traps. And then your Pan is a non-target destruction of a monster effect. Now, the Urgler actually has a better graveyard effect, because if it's in the graveyard, you target a spellcaster Dracotail monster in your grave, place this card on the bottom of the deck, and you add it back to the hand. So that lets you recycle your starter in the form of the Lucias. It also lets you recycle your Feymanas, which is really useful. The Pan is a little bit different. So the Pan is specifically if a face-up fusion monster or monster you control is destroyed by card effect. While this card's in the graveyard, except during damage state, you place this card on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, you special summon a non-fusion Dracotail monster from your graveyard. Now, there's a couple of good things about that, is because that can allow you to either get back Moodaloo, and then you've got the ability during the main phase to fuse. It can let you get back your Lucias, which is going to be your strongest attack point. Unless you have the Urgler in the grave, then that will be your option. Then it can also allow you to bring back the Feymana. Not that that's kind of one you want to be focusing on, but there was a time in the Malice matchup that to get a little bit more damage on the board, I had to crash my Arfleon into their Nibiru. But then I was like, oh, I could have used Pan to then bring it back, which is really kind of cool, but I missed that bit. But that's something to be aware of. I then went up to 3 Rahu Dragontail. Now, yesterday at Locals, I went with 2 Rahu Dragontail and 3 Ketu. At this event, I cut Ketu down. Now, it's a really weird kind of thing going on in my head with that one, which is kind of something that I was contemplating with and considering. Right at the last minute, I was like, I can push the deck to 42. I just feel that 43 is probably a little bit too much. Whether that logic comes from, I don't know. Rahu Dragontail is your... People keep saying it's branded fusion, Shadow fusion, but the biggest downside is it still locks you into fusions. But it does require you to use a card in the hand, because at the moment, all Dracotail monsters need a card in the hand and then one from the deck. Which is great, because then the idea is the card you send from the deck, whether it be the Dracotail from the hand or not, the card you send from the deck will guarantee be a Dracotail monster 9 times out of 10, and you'll get to set probably a Ketu, or you'll be able to set one of the trap cards. So that's kind of the reason I went down that route. Now, because I was on the Regenesis, I decided that the search was less important, because I was like, okay, cool. If I see the Ketu and I see a Regenesis, I have to prioritize which one I want to search for, which is going to be more useful for me. Now, the search of a Ketu, if your opponent controls a monster as well, you get to fuse, which is a real good benefit, which is why you'd probably want to consider playing 3 of it. This was something I wanted to test out because I was shaving down some of the edges, and I was like, you know what? Rahu Dragontail needs me to have that monster in the hand, whereas Ketu searches out that monster and then more times than not will fuse. It obviously searches you out your starter as well if you're going first. You can still use the Rahu Dragontail. It was just one of the ones that I thought I could afford to cut one down and see how it went. Honestly, I was kind of happy with it. There wasn't really a point where I was like, I really wish I had Ketu. And there wasn't a point where I was like, I really wish I had one less Rahu Dragontail instead as well. Moving on to the trap cards. So we've got the 1 Horn and we've got the 1 Flame. As I said, I saw these cards in my hand way too much for my comfortable, but they are still incredibly good cards. So both of them have an effect that this one targets an attack position monster on the field, you return it to the hand or the extra deck, and you place a Dracotail card from the grave or banishment back to the bottom of the deck and then draw a card. The Dracotail Flame lets you negate a face-up spell on the field, and then you also get to place a Dracotail monster from the Dracotail card from the grave or banishment to the bottom of the deck and draw a card. So it lets you recycle your Ketus, your Dracotail, Rahu Dragontails, and everything else in between. So that's probably what you'll be focusing on recycling more times than not. It can be ashed, it can be belled. Be warned, they are one ways to counter these cards. There were times where I was like, Flame is probably the better option, but then in a Malice matchup, it's like, is it really worth this over the Horn? Horn is going to be better, which is why I ultimately ended up keeping both. So that's it for the Dracotail cards themselves. They do take out a decent chunk, but then obviously the supporting factor is going to be the Regenesis. So for the Regenesis, we've got 3 Archfiend. This is like your ideal, I mean, I don't need to explain too much on Regenesis, but your Archfiend is your ideal one. Now, the reason Archfiend's really good is because your fusion monster, the Arfleon, has 2500 defense. So that's a monster on the field you need in order to summon down the rest of your Regenesis. For the hand, the other Dracotail is Feymana that has 2500 defense. That's the other card you need in your hand to be revealed for your Archfiend. Now, more times than not, when you're considering your Archfiend, you've also got your Warrior, Sage, and Dragon, and then you're backing up with Regenesis being able to search any of these. And the amount of times that people forget Regenesis can banish from the graveyard to summon back is really, really important. Obviously, that's only going to be done during turn 2 because you can only use, you can't use it the turn it's sent to the graveyard, but it's just one of the ones that searches you out the piece you might need. It searches you out the Archfiend if you've got that starter. If you want to get your... If you've got a card that you can't get out of the hand, you'll go for Sage. More times than not, you're probably going to go for Warrior or Dragon if you don't have another Regenesis to send. So yeah, I like this engine. It's a 9-card engine. This is where it kind of gets down to personal preference, because when you look at the 9-card engine, you could take this entire 9-card engine out, and then that's where the differences of the Dracotail variants come into play, because 9 cards is going to be around about your K9 engine. 9 cards can also be roundabout a Shadow engine. It can also be roundabout additional engine for a pure version. So this is the element that kind of sets you apart from the rest, along with some of the other cards I'm going to show you here, which are like the hand traps and breakers and everything else in between. So it's something I wanted to consider. I really like Regenesis. I like the way they play. There was a couple of times, like, what I don't like about the K9s is the K9s need your opponent to play cards from the hand. So if they choose not to activate cards in the hand, the K9s don't do anything. Very rare in some scenarios where your opponent isn't able to do that, but the Yummies just don't do it anyway. The other thing that I like about the Regenesis is they're not card effects that are activating, so they just summon themselves down to the field, and as long as you don't use their effects, Yummies can't change. So it's kind of like having your own Prankatops without an effect. You're just getting these strong monsters that can hit the field and then start to push in for an OTK. The other thing I liked about this engine, which is different to the Shadow version and different to the pure version, is this sets you up with an Omni Negate. This can set you up with protection from the Biru, which is kind of the same thing of what K9 can do, because they can set you up Ripper to protect, but then if your opponent stops any part of that engine coming through, that's where it's going to become an issue. Whereas they have to stop your Archfiend and hope you haven't already opened up a Regenesis or already opened up a Sage to still get you that Omni Negate, and you're still then able to recycle it. Another benefit of the Regenesis is if you use them as fusion material with your Fey Mana during your opponent's turn, you add them back during the end phase, which is really, really cool. Moving on to like the breakers, the hand traps and everything else in between. Now this is the card that I wanted to really get into the deck, and it was Kashtira Fenrir. This actually put in a huge amount of work for me. The reason it's putting in so much work is I'd go draw phase, standby phase, main phase, summon down the Fenrir. Then I wouldn't use Fenrir's search effect. And the reason I wouldn't do that is I would make sure the first search effect I did was from Regenesis of Ketu. Once that happens, my opponent they've got nothing else, and go, okay, cool, Fenrir's search. And the reason you would do that is it gives you another monster back in your hand that can then become your fusion material for the back of your Fey Mana. So if you were to go Ketu and get Lucias, normal summon the Lucias, search you out your Fey Mana, then use Fenrir to search the monster, happy days. Now, I guess what you lot are saying, you're a lot are saying, well, what about Unicorn? Don't get it wrong, the amount of times I actually considered, could I play 3 Fenrir plus a Unicorn, or could I play 2 Fenrir and a Unicorn? Because then on those times where I can't get anything, or I need that monster in the hand to be 2500 attack, I could go Fenrir, search out Unicorn, I've got that to resolve. Ultimately, I went against it because I was like, okay, well, if I get Unicorn, if I see Unicorn in my hand, Unicorn's not searching anything, Unicorn's not doing anything, it's not progressing my game state in any way that I want it to. Fenrir put in a lot of work for me. Being able to have that body on the board, another form of disruption, is still quite good into Yummies. It's good against like most other things as well. When they're trying to use effects, when they're trying to have continuous spell cards, when they're trying to have field spells around, Fenrir is a really great option to get rid of it. And it ultimately allowed me to feel a bit more comfortable about not playing Prankatops in the side deck, and I went with the Fenrirs. Then Ash Blossom, pretty sound on that one. 3 Fualos and then 2 Perulia. Again, last minute, I was like, I need some space in the side deck, so I main deck the Perulia, which is what bumps this up to a 42 card deck. 1 Magnuma, this is kind of just good because it lets you search out your Dracotail and Mululu. It can also search out your Regenesis Dragon, so it gets you a monster that is the stats you need. It can disrupt your opponent, like there's times when you can disrupt Yummy with this, there's times when you can disrupt, less so in the mirror match, that's where it gets a little bit awkward, is trying to disrupt them. But even then, when you're trying to respect decks like, not so much Malice, but even Mitsurugi Raizu, which was also there in attendance, it's a card that could put in a bit of work for you, and I still liked it because it still treats itself as the attack stat requirement for your Regenesis and everything else in between. The last card is 2 True Tactics Frost, 1 Talents, and 1 Prosperity. Now, I was expecting a lot more K9, a lot more Dracotails. I thought more people would be playing during my turn, which is why I thought Frost was going to be more important. Ultimately, that never really happened. I think I activated Frost like once or twice, and it never really progressed me to the way that I wanted it to be. Now, Frost will make a little bit more sense once you see the side deck as well, but it just didn't really feel like it was worth its spot. Like, I could feel myself cutting 2 of these and then putting in like main deck and Ghost Ogres, main deck and Ghost Spells, something a little bit more effective that way instead. That might change depending on the environment you're going to, but for me personally, it just wasn't something that I felt was as powerful as another alternative could have been. I'll take you through the extra deck and then I'll take you through the side deck so you have a bit of an idea. So I'll take you through the cards that I summon the most. So you play your Dracotail Artheon. You're going to be maxing out on this. Again, this is a last minute change from Locals. Locals, I was only playing 2 of it. I was just like, do I ever go through 3? And then ultimately it was one of the ones that was like, I have the space. I took out a Dart the Dart Charmer and an Access Code Talker, and I was like, I have the space. I can go through 3 if I need to really enter a grind state. So playing 3 is not the end of the world. Then got the 2 of the Glamel. 2 is like absolutely fine. Like I think you could probably play 2 Artheon, 2 Glamel, and it wouldn't be that big of an issue. So this has a when effect. So when you activate a Dracotail monster effect, or sorry, Dracotail card effect, you get to target a card on the field and destroy it. Now it is a when effect, so it can miss timing if your opponent responds to one of your card effects. So something you do need to keep in mind, but it is still very, very annoying to deal with. The other benefit about both these cards is if they're in the graveyard and 2 monsters are sent to the graveyard at the same time, so whether that be for a fusion spell, whether that be just you linking them off or anything like that, you can just revive them back, which is insane, which will explain one of the XZs that I'm playing in my extra deck a little bit later on. The last 2 fusion monsters is the 1 Secturion Dragon and the 1 Mysterion the Dragon Crown. Now, Secturion Dragon is an insanely good card against the Blue Eyes matchup. It's also really, really good in the Mirror matchup because it means that your opponent cannot activate spellcasters or dragon monsters effects that are special summoned. The other thing that I found out about this one as well is it negates C104. It doesn't negate C104, but it means they can't activate the effect to then negate an effect, burn you for half your life points, and then rip a card from your hand. So that was really, really good in my local matchup yesterday, which was Regenesis K9. So really good card. I really rate it. The Mysterion was in here mainly for Yummy. I played it against Yummy, and I summoned it against Yummy, and I thought it was really, really awkward. And now I could be completely wrong on how it was ruled and everything else, but I'm pretty sure they were right with it. But the way I saw it is I would summon the Mysterion on the Crown, which is fine, because the way it would work is you would go, your opponent goes chain link 1 Yummy to tag out, to summon 2. You're like, okay, cool. Chain any type of fusion play that you can, which will probably be your Femena. Bring out the Mysterion on the Crown. The Mysterion on the Crown sees the monsters come back to the field. It then uses its effect to target one of them to banish it. Now, what I didn't like about it was whatever gets brought back, if there is the Link 1 on the field that can use its effect, or any other Synchro that can dodge or tag or whatever, it then doesn't resolve because they would tag that target out. And then because you can't identify, like you haven't banished anything and you can't identify the type you've banished, it doesn't do anything. So it's not as effective as I would have liked it to be, just because of how like tricky and how dodgy the dodgy and the like jumping out of the way the Yummies are. So I'd probably still keep it in here because there's space in the extra deck, but it's one of the ones that maybe I've misunderstood it, but it just hasn't put as much. It's not like if you put this against the mirror match, it's within reason pretty much an auto win con because they can't use the Artheon to bounce it, they can't use the Glamel to destroy it, and it's just one of these really annoying cards that sits there. And unless they have banished cards, it's already strong. So the best thing you could do is have your own Dracotail crash into it, and then start blanking your plays from that point on. The only other card that I ever really summoned in this in deck was a Typhon. I was playing 2 of this, just because of those odd chances where you might need to make 2 of them. This is the only other one I summoned. I think I summoned it like once or twice, and it didn't get you the win con. Like the rest of this extra deck is pretty flexible. So the rest of the extra deck, I never summoned. So we've got Moon. How I did behind this was there was space in the extra deck. I would be able to make this, use it, target one of my opponent's monsters, and work my way into the Underworld Goddess. The Underworld Goddess is basically in here to out towers. I don't think this was ever going to come up. Honestly, I don't think it was ever coming up. This is just one of them ones to out towers, because I was like, if you don't respect towers in the current game right now, if they get to their towers, they're probably going to win. Now, I had to face Raid Raptors that played 2 towers because they got both of the rank 13s on the field, and I was like, yo, how am I supposed to out both of these? I could out one, but I can out the other. So I was like, you need to kind of respect towers quite a bit. With Lunar Lights running around, possible the odd rogue Power Ranger deck, Superquants, there we go, brain kind of escaped me. Like Superquant K9 is something that I really want to play myself as well and test out, but I feel like if you let them get Great Magnus to the field and you can't get rid of it, you're in big trouble. The last cards that I didn't play at all, actually I lie, I actually played SP Little Knight pretty standard, but you go Spirit with the Eyes of Blue, you basically turn your, you would turn your Lucias into this, and then you'd go into the Hieratic Seals. And then by going into the Hieratic Seals, you'd obviously have the bounce, because once you've used your Artheon on the field, there's no reason to keep it on the field, so you just link it off into Hieratic Seal, and if 2 cards leave the field, you bring it back, happy days. But never made either of these. SP Little Knight, I think I made it like once or twice. And the last card that I thought I'd try out was number 68, Sanapod the Sky Prison. Now, the reason I like this one was because I was like, well, if I summon down Archfiend and I've got the Artheon on the field, as I mentioned, Artheon's already used its effect. It's not really going to be doing anything more for me on the field. Or if I bring it back from the field, when it leaves the field, it gets banished. So if I can use it as an XE's material, it doesn't get banished, it doesn't go anywhere. So the options were Dingirsu, I was like, Destruction Protection, nice, and a non-target send. Hope Harbinger, Spell Negate, Absorb, and a attack redeclaration. The other one was Buzz King. I was like, cool, get to look at my opponent's extra deck, take away a core card, but very rarely are there any decks that have one core card. Like, it would have been good if I went first against any of the Dracotail matchups and I saw their Secturion Dragon. I was like, cool, get that out of here. But ultimately, I went for the Sky Prison. Now, for people that don't know what this does, it gains 100 attack for defense for each monster in the graveyard. Once per turn, you get to detach material from this card until the end of your opponent's next turn. This card cannot be destroyed by card effects, and neither player can special monsters from the graveyard. So I was like, you know what? If I go first and I do this against Yummy, during their turn, they're not going to be able to tag out their cards. They're not going to be able to play the quick play to bring back from the grave. They're going to have to use it from the hand. And I felt it just made it a little bit more awkward for them to navigate around. In the mirror match, very rarely would it actually do anything, but it could stop the ability of using the Secturion Dragon to bring back a spellcaster, which sometimes does come up. And then other than that, I couldn't think of like any other main, like with K9s, it means Lupus can't come back to the field, which I thought was kind of cool. So it was just one of the ones that I felt would have been a good option, but I never made it. And it was one of the ones where the situation, I was like, the situation to make a rank 8, I didn't want to lean into it much. I didn't want to have like 3 rank 8s in the extra deck, because I was like, well, it's very rare that I'm going to get to a position where I can summon rank 8s on a consistent basis. So I only chose one that I thought would be useful for me just because I had that flex spot in the extra deck. And yeah, never really went with it. Now, if you're playing a different variant of the deck, your Typhons are less reliant, and you basically just open up this entire space here. You'd probably still play, I'll deal with that in a second, the free Artheon. You might consider still playing the Spirit. You might consider still playing this, 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 and this, maybe one Typhon. So it still then opens up like 4 to 5 spaces, maybe, for like any other type of extra deck style. So if you want to play Shadows, that's 5 Shadow monsters. If you want to play K9s, that's 5 K9 cards, or like 5 K9 monsters. So yeah, it kind of gives you a bit more flexibility depending on the variant you want to play. Moving on to the side deck. So for the side deck, I went with a lot of monsters for this one. So for the monsters, I went with 2 Bestials. Again, this was like, I wouldn't say like a last minute kind of option. But it was one of the ones where I was umming and ahhing between like a couple of monster cards. I was like, well, do I respect Malice and Crystron K9? Like, do I need to have Lances in the round? Because it was only 14 people, I was like, what are the chances that those 2 decks are going to feature? I was like, I'll put these in. Because like in a Mitsurugi Raziel matchup, they could put in some work. In a mirror match, sometimes it can put in a work depending on what they're trying to target. In a Yummy matchup, they could put in a bit of work. In a Blue Eyes matchup, they can put in a bit of work. Honestly, they did put in a bit of work, but they just weren't as impactful as I might have wanted to. Like, I could much rather have seen myself playing free Ghost Ogre, which I never put in, never played, so the irony behind that one. Free Ghost Spell, I put this in quite a few times because in the mirror match it can be quite useful to deal with. I mean, not like massively, it can deal with an Arthleon, but the chances are when they make an Arthleon, they're going to be going chaining 1 Arthleon, chaining 2, chaining 3, so you're not doing anything there. It's more so in here for the trap cards, because both of the trap cards need to move a card from the graveyard. It's a whole part of one effect, so you can Ash it, but you can also Bell it. And I was like, well, if my opponent's trying to negate one of my spells, I can Bell it, or if they're trying to return one of my tap position monsters, I can Bell it. So, if anything, I could very easily see myself playing free Ghost Spell, and then I'm not sure on the Ogres. Then free Drown Lockbird, I put it in like once, never saw it, never needed it. Lancia, this was one that right at the last minute I cut it down to 2. Now, the other cards I was considering were other Frost targets, a 3rd Frost, a more Dark Rule and no mores, and everything else in between. So this was only put in against a Malice matchup. I never saw it. No surprise there. I'm only playing 2 of it. It's one of them flex ones that you're only putting it in for like 1, maybe 2 decks, and if you don't need it, you're not going to play it. The last card, the penultimate card that put in a lot of work for me was free Book of Eclipse. The reason I say it put in a lot of work for me is at this event, it was kind of okay. Like, I drew it for turn against the Yummy matchup, and that was kind of what allowed me to win the game, because I drew it for turn, draw phase, activate it, flip it everything face down, and time was coming close, so I was just like, Regenesis, battle phase. They tried to use the Link 1. Link 1 gets negated with Sage, and then I can go through from there. In the matchup yesterday against Ray Raptors, I flipped it, stopped their summons. It's also quite good against Yummy if they go second, because you flip their first summon, they need to have an extender to get moving. So it's just one of the ones that I thought was really kind of good. And the last card was the 1 Dark Rule No More. I think I sided it in once. I had the option to set it or add it off a Frost. Didn't do that. I'm actually quite tempted to play the Black Goat that laughs maybe in the main deck. Like, if I was to cut the horn, I'd probably put the Black Goat that laughs in. Not saying that that's going to happen, but if I did decide to go down that route, that is an option for me to use. So that's it for the entire profile and the breakdown, the match breakdown, and everything. Now, Before I go anywhere, I do have to say a massive, massive shout out, because the whole inspiration behind this deck, like I saw it got posted and I was like, oh, yo, that's really interesting. Looked into it. Is iDrago OR? I believe it's OR, so apologies. But they were very, very responsive for me to asking their questions. It was something that I considered, but never really put much thought into it. Like I wasn't going to take it to a competitive level. I saw their build, saw what they played, and they played a couple of different things to me, which was absolutely fine. And I kind of just adapted it to my own play style. I was like, cool, so they've proven that this hybrid can work. Let's see what I can do with it. I had a lot of fun with the deck. It was, again, one of them ones right at the last minute. I was like, what do I change? What can I change? I do like what it can do. I do feel that there are weaknesses with the deck. I also feel that there's ways that once your opponent knows it, it can be made very awkward. And what I do like about the most recent set of Justice Hunters is there are decks that each deck kind of answers each other. What I mean by that is Yummy answers K9 because they just won't trigger the K9s. Dracotail, in a sense, can answer the Yummies because they have the Artheon to return the cards from the field back to the hand, so that they need an extender in order to get their presence on the field. And then they can utilize a card like Book of Eclipse because you put your fusion materials face down, you can still fuse with them, which is absolutely fine. And then the K9s can answer the Dracotails because the Dracotails are always going to want to activate cards in the main phase from the hand being your Fey Mana, as it's such an important card. So that's something that will always get used, and you're like, cool, Dracotails, off we go. K9s, off we go. So I can see how it works, and I can see why K9 Dracotails is also a deck, which is crazy. I do like the K9s and the Dracotails more than the Yummies in the fact that they can be utilized in more decks and more variety. And it's going to be very interesting to continue experimenting going forward. Like, I am tempted by the Shadow build. Like, if I was to play the Shadow build, I would cut the Shadow engine down and probably go for 3 Shadow Fusion and then maybe 2 to 3 Beast. And then I quite like the idea of playing Hedgehog. And the reason I like that is because you would send Hedgehog, it would search out a Beast. So if you do decide to go into Gristar, you've got a guaranteed Beast in your hand, so you can negate and inherit someone off the back of Gristar, which is really, really powerful. The only thing I don't like about the Shadow matchup is the Shadow version. Is the Shadow version needs you to play under Nibiru. Like, if you play into Nibiru, you're in trouble. And like, I didn't run into Nibiru, but my opponent on the Malice matchup did March Hare as I was trying to go battle phase. I was like, oh, negate it with Sage, and then I went Nibiru. I was like, yo, you've cooked me. So I can see how useful Nibiru may or may not be in this format. I know most people can play around it, but again, it's one of them cards, if you disrespect it, you'll get hit with it, and then you're like, that can change the game. The biggest benefit of something like having your field Nibiru'd is like your Artheons and your Glamels in the graveyard will come back, and then you still have plays that can be made. Anyway, I hope this has been informative for you. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put in the comments down below. I'm always happy to answer them. Again, massive shout out to iDrago Or, who kind of inspired this video. Really, really do well. I'm going to keep changing it, tweaking some of the cards as well, and kind of get to a position with the deck that I really do enjoy, and like the whole kind of harmony works a little bit more, and then see whether I like to keep playing the Regenesis. Like, the Regenesis is just one of them ones that not a lot of people think about, and then like, all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, and then you're like, here, strong monster, strong monster, strong monster. It's quite like Yummies as well, where they always try to get rid of the monster with 25, but then what they forget is if they have a monster on the field that has 25, either attack or defense, you're like, good to roll. Yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.